In this video, we'll take a quick look at Meterpreter networking commands. Covering these commands will enable us to understand the forthcoming videos, which we'll be discussing in this section. To start with Meterpreter networking commands, we have three basic commands that can be helpful for us. The first one will be the ipconfig command. Here I'm starting with my Meterpreter session. The ipconfig command basically represents the complete configuration of multiple IP addresses that are provided to our target system. Here you can see that one of the interfaces has a local IP, another interface has a LAN IP setup. Then there is another LAN adapter setup that has an IP in the range of 10, 0, 3, 15. And finally we have one more Ethernet adapter that reflects the same IP address. So, the ipconfig command basically represents the different adapters and a particular address used in order to access these. Moving ahead to our next command, we will be discussing root. This command has been of interest to us and basically reflects the routing table that is currently saved inside the default interface of our target. Routing tables basically give us an idea of different routing mechanisms that the TCP packets are following inside the target machine. This root command is very much similar to the root command present in our MS-DOS mode. It basically displays what can be used to modify the local IP routing table on the target machine. Now, in order to understand how we can add our own routing procedure here, we use the H parameter. Here you can see that we have add, delete and list options available to us. The format in which we can provide the routing information varies. For example, to add, we will have to provide the root. The first one asks for a subnet. Then it asks for a net mask. And finally it asks for a gateway. Here you can see that it's created the route according to the values that we have passed. The third interesting command that Meterpreter provides is the port forward command. Let us first see what port forward actually means. Look at this presentation. Suppose our target PC is an SSH server, and we, being the attacking PC, have gained access to this SHH server. Now, there can be a scenario where there is another IRC server that we cannot access directly. But the SSH server, which is our target server, or the server that we have compromised, has the access to the IRC server. So, we can build up a tunnel. If you look at the purple line in the second half of the diagram, you can see that this tunnel can actually forward every data from our attacking machine to our target machine, and finally to the IRC server. This concept is known as port forwarding. We are using our compromised machine in order to access the IRC server. Interpreter provides us with the port forward command, which is port FWD. When we look at the help file, we can see the port forward has different parameters, such as capital L, which is the local host we want to listen on, L, the local port we want to listen on, P, the remote port to connect to, and R, the remote host we want to connect to. So a simple port forward command will look like this. The capital L parameter will add the local host on which we're going to listen. If we just give the local IP, we can give the port number, for example the local port, as 5678. The remote host we want to connect to is any remote IP like 165.56.45.7. And finally the remote port on which we want to connect to. Suppose that our IRC server was on port 667. So this is how a typical port forwarding command looks like. So this was a quick demonstration of different networking commands and how port forwarding actually works and is implemented inside the Metasploit framework.